what a story too, right? So, can you explain a little bit about addiction, food addiction? Because most of us either, I was sort of taught that either it's because something's not going well in your emotional life that we eat too much, or that we just don't have willpower. So,
Right.
but you're talking about it in terms of an addiction.
Yeah. And I mean literal addiction. I don't mean like a metaphor or sort of an analogy. I mean an actual addiction. So, um, addiction, basically, physiologically, if you boil it down to its essence, is dopamine downregulation in the nucleus accumbens. That's basically what it is. Like
Mm.
you look at this reward center in the brain, there's this sort of circuit in there. There's the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens and the prefrontal cortex, and they're all kind of linked up in a certain way. But this is the part of the brain that sort of motivates you to act. And it's important for sex, it's important for eating, it's important, for the basic drives that are just so foundational, that they had to be sort of hardwired in to make sure that we didn't forget to do these things, right? And these are the parts of the brain that can be hijacked by sort of artificially strong stimuli, right? Like internet porn or donuts, right? Things that just didn't exist back in the day. So you take like evolutionarily important stimuli and you just jack them up,
Mm.
way beyond what our system evolved to sort of handle. And so the foods that are around today blow out the dopamine receptors in that area. They just swamp them. And that part of the brain sort of regulates itself by just saying, whoa, okay, well, that was ridiculous and excessive. We don't need anywhere near that much dopamine on board. So what we'll do is we'll just like trim the receptors. We'll just make them less numerous, less responsive.
Mhm.
And so now when that onslaught comes, we'll be good to go.
Almost less
But
able.
what?
It's almost less able, like they're almost less able in a way. The
Yeah, totally.
receptors.
I mean, it's a great strategy as long as you're going to keep eating donuts every day. But as soon as you decide to stop eating donuts, now you're in trouble because your world without donuts feels bleak. It feels itchy, needy, not okay, right?
Because you can't eat anything else that gives you the same rush that donuts do.
Totally. And because
Yeah.
your brain has adapted to need that much stimulation just to be normal. So this is what people who've never been really addicted to anything don't get, is that the addict isn't using to get high anymore. The addict is using to get normal.
Normal.
Like,
Yeah.
trying to get back to baseline.
I'm
of
glad
like,
you made
okay,
that point.
yeah.
But not everybody is a food addict, and everybody has eaten a donut.
Right. Yeah. So it turns out not every brain does what I just said. So brains fall on a continuum of what I call the susceptibility scale. And this is a really important point. This is sort of the crux of the obesity epidemic, is that some brains modify themselves, like I just described, really readily. And other brains never do at all to the same stimulation. Like you eat the same donuts, right? Some brains are addictable and some brains are not. It turns out it's about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, where 1/3 of brains are not addictable at all to anything, not even heroin. And, you might think that's preposterous. Like, of course, anyone would get addicted to heroin if you inject them over and over and over again to heroin. And I say, not really. Like, you send people home with a Vicodin prescription after back surgery. Do you generate pill heads 100% of the time with that formula? No. They use it. They get addicted in the sense that tolerance and withdrawal happen, but they can't wait to get off the stuff. Like, they'll be off it at the first opportunity. And then other people will start, doubling their dose and sneaking pills in the bathroom. And, so 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 are not addictable. 1/3 are moderately addictable. 1/3 are highly addictable, given the same inputs. Yeah.
I have a question about that. That's so fascinating, because I had a career as a bike racer for many years, and I broke as a bike racer. She was an Olympian. She was an
wow.
Olympian. She won a silver medal for our country.
Wow.
So I broke many bones along the way. And
riding a bike by falling off?
Yeah, yes. That at first she wasn't very good. That's not nice. But that's also true. No. Okay. Enough from you. And I really liked Percocet. And so the third time I broke a bone, I remember crashing
and hitting the ground, and I knew I broke my collarbone because you just know. And I was like, oh yes, Percocet. I mean, that's literally what went through my brain. But I had the kind of brain, and I had a bit of addictive nature, I think, in my anorexic years. But I, like you, did drugs recreationally and was able to just stop doing them. I mean, I didn't have to go through like a detox program for cocaine. So when I would be broken and I'm taking Percocet, it really did its job in terms of helping with the pain. But around a week in, I would find that it wasn't really, I was not in so much pain anymore, so I didn't really need it. And it stopped doing what it felt like it was doing in that week that I was really, really great. So I would be the person that I have lots of expired Percocet in my, medicine cabinet. I don't go after it because I just don't want to be addicted to anything. But I don't have that same experience that I have when I'm really in pain. It like stops doing what it's doing. And I've never really understood that. I do think I have that middle brain, like you're talking about, that,
But do you have it with food, Dotsie? Because you struggled with food. So
but the anorexia was more for me of a very serious addiction to control, to wanting to have, usurp control over my life. So I think that was more of that. But I don't have, as you know, any addiction to sugar. Like I'm the person who'll eat like half a vegan donut.
I
and
do
put
have
the
an
other,
addiction. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't want anymore. So I've always wondered what was happening there. What's happening there in that that I stopped because it's not doing.
Yeah. So Dottie, great question. To my knowledge, there's no research on this, but I'll tell you what I know just from working, clinically speaking, with thousands of addicts in a variety of capacities. There is something different that happens in the brain when we're using a substance medicinally versus when we're using it to get high, to get a hit. It hits the brain differently. So for example, from a food addiction perspective, for a lot of us food addicts, sugar, for example, will be just it's like a lights out drug for us. Like, oh my gosh, we're so addicted to it. But give someone a colonoscopy prep, which is loaded with sugar. I mean, it's nasty, but it's loaded with sugar and it should trigger them. It should result in cravings and binges, later on, downstream, next week, whatever. And it doesn't. Never once have I seen it trigger anybody. Huh. There's something about taking something medicinally. Me, like I'm as addicted to sugar as possible to be. But if I have hives and I drink Benadryl, which is straight sugar, it's fine. It's fine. So there, and I, I'm a drug addict, but I've had surgeries, like I've had 2 C-sections, for example, and I've taken Vicodin after them. It doesn't trigger me. But as soon as the pain's gone, now I'm at a choice point. If I kept using it to get high, that would be an issue. So I don't know, Dotsie, what the neuroscience of that is, but I do know it's a thing that that drugs hit the brain differently when there's a need for them, when the motive is for it to be medicine as opposed to a hit.
So there's loads of people that are addicted to opioids, and many of them started because they broke their arm or broke their hand or something. So they're making a distinctive decision after that medicinal usage of it to maybe their life feels like it's in the crapper, and so they keep taking it, and then that's when the problem starts. When they're not in pain anymore from their broken arm.
Yeah, from a dopamine perspective, what happens is, before you've learned there. So, okay. I just shared that some brains are addictable and some brains are not, right? But then you might say, well, what about like cross addiction? Like for me, I'm not addicted to shopping. Shopping is really addictive for some people. Like that Amazon one click is their crack. Seriously. And that's a legit addiction. Like you can see it, down-regulating those dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens. I have none of it. I can't wait to get out of a mall. The fluorescent lights make me feel I don't like it. I never have issues shopping online. I go in, I get what I need. I'm happy to log out. So what's up with that, right? Like I've been addicted to almost everything except shopping doesn't do it for me. So the issue is from a dopamine perspective, there's like a dopamine spike that happens when your brain notices that it just got some relief. And so it does matter, like, okay, you're going through a divorce, or like, you're having struggles with your son who's addicted to something and you're in pain or whatever. And then suddenly out of the blue, like for me, I'm vulnerable to this. I could like get a hit from shopping all of a sudden at the age of 44. I've never gotten a hit from shopping before, but if I, let's say I just had a big fight with my husband and boom, I'm shopping on Amazon and I just notice it does something for me. I get this dopamine spike. After I've experienced that in that way, that dopamine spike moves upstream. So instead of getting the hit after the action, you get the hit in anticipation. Now I'm thinking about shopping and I'm getting the dopamine spike. It shifts. The dopamine spike moves earlier in the process. It's a learning phenomenon that you kind of go through if you have a brain that's susceptible. So just saying, I guess the take home points are, you have to have a brain that's susceptible in the first place. And then the second thing is, with that particular substance, with that set of cues, you have to wire your brain up to be addicted to that. And there's sort of an environmental vulnerability that has to be in place right there for you to learn the addiction to that.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
mean,
complete
I'm a
sense.
sugar addict, but
Yeah.
alcohol, I've never really drank anything, but alcohol doesn't interest me. And that
Right.
has,
Tons of sugar.
yeah.
But you're vulnerable, it could in the future. Like,
Right.
because you have a brain that's more susceptible, it would behoove you to be a little bit more cautious around alcohol than someone who's kind of figured out that they're not addictable, basically. They don't have, quote unquote, an addictive personality, which is a thing.
Is the methamphetamines and the cocaine and the drugs that you did in the past, does that kind of carve a pathway for future processed sugar addiction?
So here's what I believe about this. I don't know of any published studies on this, but here's what I believe. I believe that for me, my heavy drug use, repeated over, I got addicted to crystal meth over several years, quit that. Then got addicted to cocaine over a period of time, quit that. Then got addicted to freebasing cocaine and crack, quit that. So I over a period of 6 years, blew out my dopamine receptors, kept wiring them up for addiction and then quitting. I believe that what I did during that time was I created a hair trigger sensitivity to dopamine downregulation. That means that my brain is like a ticking time bomb. Like I can go into some sort of addictive situation and my brain will wire for it so fast, it'll make your head spin. Whereas someone who just doesn't have that background wouldn't fall as hard and as fast to addictive stimuli as I will.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.